Hi, this is Dr. Carl Jobson at the University of Arizona, and we're going to do a little review of the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support System. If you remember, this is a system that's born out of the field of public health, and it's been applied to both academics and behavior in public schools. On the academic side, think of this in terms of a reading program. As far as universal interventions that are preventive and proactive, a good school-wide reading program for everyone. And as far as secondary interventions that are high efficiency and rapid response, I think we've talked before about the DIBELS system, or a way to frequently measure student reading that would determine for us which students needed secondary level or group level reading interventions. And then at the tertiary level, we've got assessment-based and high-intensity programs. So in terms of reading, this might mean students that weren't having success in the secondary interventions, the small group interventions, might receive individualized reading instruction or might even be referred into special education. We're going to take a little closer look at the behavioral side of universal, secondary, and tertiary interventions. So in positive behavioral interventions and supports, there are really four elements that fit together to support social competence and academic achievement. The outcomes for students are monitored through data, and there are systems that support staff behavior so that they can implement practices that support student behavior. And again, we monitor that data to make sure that the systems and the practices are actually producing the outcomes we're looking for. Let's take a look at Tier 1 first. So let's look at the data and practices in Tier 1. Data in Tier 1, on the behavioral side of positive behavioral supports and interventions, the office referral or the office discipline referral is really what is most frequently measured. And in past years, in many years past, often kids got office referrals and they went to the office and the administrator worked with the student, came up with some kind of consequence, and then filed away the office referral form or just tossed it away or wrote a note on it and sent it back to the teacher. Now, through school-wide positive behavior supports, the notion is to track a lot of the information that can be developed from an office referral form and basically figure out where problems are occurring, when they're occurring, with whom are they occurring, the possible reasons they're occurring, and what kinds of administrative decisions are we making. The National Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports over the last 15 years has developed a set of data collection applications for positive behavioral support. One of the first they developed was the SWIS system, the School-Wide Information System, and they're on release number 5 now, and it's really become a very sophisticated system. And I'd encourage you to go to PBIS apps, and you can play around in the SWIS 5 system if you click on App Demos. This is what the data entry system looks like for referrals in the SWIS system. So you pick whether it's a major or a minor type of referral, the name of the student, student's grade level, whether or not the student has an IEP. This way you can keep track of whether or not you are over referring or inappropriately referring students who have special education status. You can also track in this whether or not you are inappropriately over referring students from certain minority groups. The staff member the date of the referral, the time, the exact time, which is wonderful to have, the location, where in the school building did it take place, the problem behavior, the perceived motivation, the people who might otherwise be involved on a regular basis with this particular problem, the action, the administrative action taken at the school, and the whether there was any seclusion or restraint involved. In this case, this school chooses to track seclusion and restraint. This school also chooses to track types of harassment, which hallway this might occur in. So in case, instead of it just saying the location was the hallway, a large high school may have an east hallway, a west hallway, and so they want to keep track of where the problems exactly are happening, any additional administration issues or decisions that aren't included under actions taken. All of this can be really useful information, and when a school collects this data, immediately when you log into Swiss, you get the Swiss dashboard, which gives you the most frequently used data by schools that are doing positive behavioral interventions and supports. So a school would log in and immediately they'd be able to see certain items like the average referrals per day per month. You can see here referrals rose until November, went down in December, then January, February. And it is office referrals per day per month because there are different numbers of days in each month and different numbers of school days in each month. So September is going to have more school days in it likely than December. So we even that out by making the metric average office referrals per day per month. Referrals by time of day. You can see in this particular demo example, office referrals are happening more often between 1 and 2 o'clock. Referrals by location. You can see referrals happen most often in this school in the classroom. The number of referrals on the bus is very low in this school. In other schools you might see that it's much higher. You can also log in and see what had happened in the last week in terms of students who were referred. Other important graphs that often come up, referrals by day of week. Now here, this is just a demo school, so I think they didn't take great care in putting in these office referrals because they've included Saturday and Sunday, but it can be really useful to determine within your school whether where the referrals are coming on specific days. Referrals by problem behavior. So this lists all the referrals for particular problem behaviors and tells you which problems are most frequent. In this school, the most frequent problems are disruption, defiance, and inappropriate language. And actually, in some larger studies that we've done, we've seen that those are the most common referrals actually in middle and high school. Referrals by grade level. This is a K-8 school that we're looking at, and we can see that they frequently have referrals in 5th grade and 8th grade this particular year. And this graph is a great one. This is really useful in terms of determining who should move to the second tier, not just be in the first tier, but it also tells you how well your first tier system is working. Swiss only includes students in the system who have received an office referral. So in this school, this demo school, there are over 700 students. About 176 students have received office referrals. You can see out of this 176 students, that about 75 to 80% of them have only received one referral. So in this school, most students have never ever received a referral. Most students who have received a referral have only received one. The rest of the students, a number of them have received 2 referrals, and a small number have received 3, 4, or 5 referrals. The students who have received 3, 4, or 5 referrals in the first few months of school are the ones we might be interested in moving into a small group intervention or a Tier 2 system. Some of the practices involved at the Tier 1 level. One of the most important is developing school-wide expectations, and you can see here exactly what these tend to look like. In a school, they will have, like the Indian Creek Bobcats, they will have each area of their school listed, their school expectations: be prepared, act responsibly, work as a team, and show respect. And then for each area, they have 3 to 4 rules about how can you actually be prepared on the bus. How do you act responsibly on the bus? How do you work as a team on the bus? How do you show respect on the bus? You can see that what schools often also do is then take each one of those individual locations, turn that into a chart that can be posted in that location. So the lunchroom rules and expectations turn into a poster that's put exactly in the lunchroom. And they just don't develop expectations. What you do in positive behavioral interventions and supports is teach them. So for example, this school came up with appropriate audience behaviors for assemblies. Be a good listener, keep hands and feet quiet during a performance, clap politely at appropriate times, and use the restroom before the performance. What they developed along with it was a lesson plan to be used by all teachers in the school to teach their students the expectation. A lot of schools that will just take and teach this entire matrix the very first day or two of school just by rotating classes of kids all around the school. Like Mrs. Wilson's classroom first goes to the bus and has instruction on how to be prepared, act responsibly, work as a team, and show respect on the bus. Then they move to the lunchroom. Then Miss Wilson moves to the hallway area and arrival and dismissal area for a lesson, and rotates throughout the day, and is followed by other classes as they move through. In some middles and high schools, they'll do this across a series of weeks. So you can see that it's important to develop the expectations, actually teach the expectations to all kids, and then to acknowledge appropriate behavior. All right? So that kids who are engaging in appropriate behavior actually know that they're doing the right thing, and that we don't spend a lot of time just trying to catch inappropriate behavior. We spend more time letting kids know that they've done things the right way. We know it makes kids into good models for other kids to follow, that it makes their behavior value. It is just a good, solid teaching practice to acknowledge appropriate behavior in kids. So let's go back to this pyramid. We can see that there's the universal level, then there's the secondary level. All right? So most kids will do great with universal interventions in behavior that include good rules, routines, and environments that are arranged for them, and that they help arrange. But a small number, 5 to 10% of those kids, are still going to experience some difficulties. Right? If we teach audience behaviors, appropriate audience behavior, 90% of the kids are going to be wonderful audience members, but there will be some kids who weren't there, who didn't get the word. There'll be some kids who have some kind of perhaps some kind of disability or difference that leads them to behave differently than the rest of the audience. And it might be an opportunity for reteaching. And that's what Tier 2 is really about, is an opportunity for reteaching or monitoring. The most common Tier 2 intervention is check and connect. And this is what it looks like in the school-wide information system. That we can keep track. This is the wrong chart. Let me see if I got the right chart for this one. Yes, I do have the right chart for this one. We'll have to scoot on. So let me look at it. Let's look at it this way. This is the right chart to suggest that we might want to look at the number of students in the first 3 months of school who have 3 or more office referrals. And in this case, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students. So there's Bruce, Chris, Will, Mark, Brian, Serena, and Carly. We might pull up their referral records and see that they all have office referrals from the playground, which might lead us to put them all into one group and do an intervention on playground behavior with just these guys. But if they have office referrals coming from different settings and for different issues, for instance, tardiness, skipping, absenteeism, detention, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension is what they're getting, then we might want to deal with them separately. And one way to deal with them separately is this check and connect system. And it's really simple. It's actually a formalization of a mentoring program, which means you meet daily to weekly with a student to review their risk factors and check in with the student. So you meet with Brian in the morning and you say, gosh, Brian, I know you sure have been having a hard time on the playground. I know you've been referred a few times. Let's go over a couple simple things you can do today and while you're out in the playground to make sure you have a great day. Then you record their progress on a checklist or a check sheet that goes along with them or that someone has in their setting. Schools can set it up different ways. You record the focus of contact with the student. You record any actions taken, and it looks something like this in check and connect. In check in, check out is what they call it in the Swiss system right now. So for instance, Brian, Chris, Dana, and Serena are all in that system, and Brian for period 1 at a 4, then a 6, then a 4, then a 3, a 3, and a 3, and met 64% of his goals for that day on a particular behavior that he was working on or set of behaviors. Right? And so we get this way to track individual kids. Check and check out system, it's been pretty darn successful. Now, the third thing that we might take a look at would be tertiary interventions, individualized interventions for kids, and that falls into the area of function-based interventions, and we're going to look at that in another video soon.